you to come in the order that your name is called on our list. First will be Jace England. Second will be Grace Flitner. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Test, 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 test. Getting better out there. Ringside, can you hear me? All right. Good morning, and let's put our hands together for Class One. We've just got two seniors here for Class One in our lighter weight steers, and the young lady here with the yellow steer is going to be first in class, the one closest to me and to my right. Certainly a steer that I think as we come in here and we just evaluate him for what he is as an individual, I think one that's got enough muscle for where he is weight wise. But probably his class advantage relative to the two steers that are in here or his classmate here is that he's a little further along in his feeding period and a little closer to where he needs to be relative to body finish and fat. One that handles good and smooth over his rib cage. One that I think is, like I said, he's got enough muscle. We could certainly probably open him up in his pin set, give him a little more stifle shape and get right behind him, but one that's got enough product and muscle today relative to his classmate to end up in the first hole. The dark red steer, one that probably patterns a little better. Young man, you do a really good job of showing off his front end, keeping his head up, keeping him where he needs to be, getting him set up most of the time. Like I said, he probably just in terms of length of hip and the way he's put together from a skeletal standpoint, he's probably just a little higher quality. But he needs to be a little further along relative to body finish. As well, we need to put a shot more muscle in him, particularly in his lower quarter and stifle. We get right behind him, but one I think is sound enough as he travels the ring, and one that I think does have a little bit of advantage just in the way he's built and the way he's put together, particularly in the rear third of his body. So with that, like I said, the young lady will be first, the young man will be second. Relative to showmanship, the young man's going to be your Class One showmanship class winner. So let's give him a round of applause and let's give them both a round of applause. We send them out.
First, Lane Stevens, Jenny McKinnon.
Go ahead and give these three seniors a round of applause, if you would. The few of you that are allowed to be ringside. Certainly a little bit of a challenging class as we get in here and study these three. And the reason I say challenging is I'll be quite honest with you, and I don't mean this as a completely negative thing, but when we're showing steers, the ultimate goal of these steers out here is to make market steers and to make a high quality end product. And I'll be quite honest with the three of you, none of your steers are far enough along. All three of these steers need more body fat, and that's just simply put. I think that unfortunately, I don't think there's a steer in here that will even come close to making it in the choice grade, and I think that that's a bit of an issue. And so, as we look at those steers and we start to take that factor and toss it out just a little bit relative to the group, I think the young lady's big red steer here can win pretty easily if we just study that guy for what he is and the amount of muscle that he possesses. This one's got a big top coming out of the top of his shoulder blade there. He's got a big hip. We get right behind him, and he's probably twice as wide as the other two steers in here. So certainly from a muscle and product standpoint, that guy has the advantage. But young lady, like I mentioned, this steer needs to be quite a bit further along relative to where he's at in his feeding period. And certainly for a steer with that kind of frame size, he probably could stand another 100, 150 pounds and be in pretty good shape. So we just need him to be to have a touch more body fat, and then I would feel comfortable calling him into the choice grade. But today I don't think we can do that. So that's where he's going to stand. The black steer here that's going to be in second, a steer that fundamentally gets the job done. The steer's got some depth of body. He's got some length of body when you study him from the side. A steer that's made pretty good up through his front end, the angle to his shoulder, the way his neck ties the top of his shoulder there. The young man does a very nice job of showing him. A steer that for me just isn't heavy enough muscle to get around the steer that beats you. One that, again, just needs to be on feet a bit longer to get a little more body fat as we study that guy and handle that guy. But certainly one that structurally and the way that one's made up through his front end, the way he's made in his center body is awfully good, and the young man does a nice job showing him. The red steer is pretty similar, just doesn't have quite as much muscle as we get right behind him. He really wants to narrow up to his pins and kind of flatten to his stifle there as we study him. One that I do appreciate his depth of body. I appreciate his productive look in that regard. But again, one that's just not fat enough today if we study him there. And when we're, like I said, when we've got three that aren't quite there, and we're gonna then evaluate them for just total product, because today is the last day we can study on these guys. That one just gets kind of out-horsed in this particular class. So they are all three going to be red ribbon Group 2 steers. I don't think any of them can fall in choice grade and deserve a blue ribbon. But with that said, your showmanship class winner is going to be the young man with the black steer. So congratulations to you there, young lady. I think you do an awfully good show in that steer when he wants to cooperate for you. He's having a little bit of attitude today and wanting to kind of do a little more dancing than he probably should out here. But when you get him stuck and stopped like that, you did an awfully good job with him. So I just wanted to congratulate you there. And nothing to take away from the young man there at the end in the red steer. Really solid job today all the way through. So let's put our hands together for him. We'll send him out of the ring and congratulate him. This rounds out our senior division, and compliments to the two young men here. Give them a hand and a round of applause. These two are quite the opposite of what we looked at in the last class. You guys have done a very good job of feeding on these two and getting them where they need to be. They handle great. They'll both be blue ribbon steers. I think they're pretty safely into the choice grade, in my opinion. As well, we'll bring them both back for the champion drive here in just a minute. So loop back around, or maybe they'll decide to keep you. But either way, we're going to bring you both back. Let's talk about them. The red steer is going to be your class winner. I think there's no question that this one's more muscular. This one, he might be on the verge of being. He doesn't need to go any more days on feed than he is right now. He handles great, but any further, and we're just going to start producing fat that's going to probably need to be trimmed off. But certainly one that, in terms of muscularity, this one's got a big top coming out of the top of his shoulder there to get up on him. One that's no question the widest at his base and the widest from stifle to stifle when we get right behind him. A steer that profiles very well from the side, and certainly one that's just the most complete in this particular class. The young man's black steer here that's going to come in second. Like I said, young man, you did a really good job of feeding on this one. You got him where he needs to be. I like this one's depth of body and his productive look from the side to me. And I mean this as a very good thing. He looks like just a really good, high quality, basic fat steer. And you've done a good job with him. And so you bring him out here and you show him well. One that's got enough muscle for his frame size. Unfortunately, in this particular class, to get in with a steer that just kind of outpowers you. But certainly with what you had to work with, you did an exceptional job with them. So let's put our hands together for them. The young man with the red steer will be your showmanship winner for class number 3. I think it's very close between the two, but the young man with the red steer will be your showmanship winner for class 3. when we bring these three back for your champion senior market steer, I think you probably just by watching me, I showed my cards a little bit, but I think there's one decision in here that's pretty easy, and then I think that there's a decision for second or reserve that I think is a little more challenging, and there's a little bit of personal preference that runs in there. But I think that your champion senior steers pretty easily the young man's dark red steer up there in the front. Let's go ahead and give him a big round of applause. I think he brought an awfully good one there out of the heavy class. In contention for reserve, we come to the young man's black steer that was second to him in class and the winner of class one. And there again, that's where I said there's a little bit of personal preference in those calves. I think there's some give and take in each of those. I think for me, I'm always going to fall back to the one that I think's the most complete and combines the most good. And I think today that is the young ladies class one winner. The blonde steer there on the end will be reserve in the senior division. Let's go ahead and give all three of these a round of applause. An awfully nice job.
Congratulations, Easton Perrin, for senior champion steer. Is going to be Alex Iverson, Justin England, and Merritt O'Goran.
Group here. I think a pretty comfortable place to start in the young ladies Hereford Mark steer there up on my right. I think there's no question this is the fattest, heaviest muscled one, if we want to just put it simply and bluntly in that particular steer. I think as we study that guy, he's extra balanced from the side. One that's made extremely good in terms of the levelness of his top, his length from hooks to pins. This one paints a pretty good picture from the side, and he combines that with a very appropriate amount of finish as we get our hands on him, and a very appropriate amount of muscle as we study that guy relative to making a market steer and the amount of product he has. So congratulations, young lady. You fed that lightweight steer to an awfully appropriate place, and done a very, very nice job presenting him. The young man, and she'll be a blue and come back for our champion intermediate. We're going to move into two red ribbon steers here in these next two. I think a fair bit difference just in terms of the way these ones have been fed. The steer that's going to come next, I think you've got the advantage in muscle over the steer that's in third as we study this guy. Quite a bit wider from stifle to stifle. He's got a little more productivity to him as we study him, just in his depth and roundness of body and kind of the way he's made in that regard. He gets a little more of the basics done, checks some of those boxes, but certainly a steer that just needs to be further along. We need to feed on that guy a little longer to really make him ideal and get him where he needs to be. But certainly one you've done a nice job showing out here. The young man that's going to round out the class. Here's a big frame steer. This steer needs a couple extra 100 pounds to get him really where he needs to be. We need probably another 60 days on this guy to really get him to his end point and make him appropriate. So one that I think's got some length of body, he's got some extension. Young man, you're actually going to be our showmanship winner for this particular class. I congratulate you there. But we just need to put a little more into your steer in terms of muscle. We need to put a little more into him in terms of feed and getting him fat. But you've done a very, very good job of showing him out here, and you'll be the class winner for the showmanship division. So let's put our hands together for these three one more time and send them out of the ring. An awfully good class to start the intermediates.
In our second class of intermediates, and it's going to be Joanne McKinnon, Caleb Griggs, Cash Wells, Malachi Walker, Aiden Goodright, and Ross McKinney.
All right, if you would put your hands together for our big class today and of intermediates. I think a nice job. I will make a quick comment just relative to the entire group and not necessarily just this class, but every steer we've seen in here so far. I was here judging the steers last year, and I'll be real honest with you. And I know I said this numerous times on the microphone, but I was a little bit shocked, and not in a good way, about the lack of showmanship ability last year. I have never seen so many steers loose in the ring in my whole life of judging shows as this county fair last year, and it is remarkably different this year. So congratulations, you guys have done a fantastic job so far. There has not been a single problem steer come in the ring. We've had a few with a little energy. It's a nice cool day. Done a few little bit of dancing, but by and large, you guys have done an exceptional job. So congratulations to you guys and your families for working hard this year and making some changes if you did so, because it's substantially different, and I surely appreciate that. With that said, let's talk the steers. I think there's a pretty easy one to find in here, and that's the young man here in the purple shirt to my right. I think this steer not only combines the good things we're looking at just in terms of fundamentally making market steers. He's deep bodied, he's productive, he's functional in terms of structural correctness as he travels the ring. He combines that with an appropriate amount of body fat, and he's the most muscular steer in class. So when we do all those things, as I mentioned in the last class, or mentioned a couple classes ago, I'm always going to fall back and try to find the one that's the most complete, the one that's the combination steer in here, and he does that, and then he adds some extra bells and whistles to it. I think a pretty nice place to start. That young man will also be your showmanship winner for this particular class, so let's put our hands together for him. The young man that brings the red, or in the red shirt, that brings the black steer here, that comes in second. Here's one that's a little bit interesting to read, because from this angle right here, I'm not super impressed with that steer. I'll be quite honest. He needs to be more muscular. But where that one really separates himself from the rest of the group is when we get him out and we travel him. We look at how he comes together. He's really a nicely balanced, very complete steer from the side. One that's got, he's very good in his lines in terms of his correctness and levelness up top, his length from his hooks to pins. He's a deep-bodied steer. He's very sound in the way he travels. One that has a particular advantage in the way you fed that one. You fed him very well. He handles exceptionally well. This one's done and where he needs to be, and that's part of what gets him into that second hole in this particular class. So, young man, you've done a nice job with your project there. Young lady that brings the yellow steer, here's one that does have an advantage just in terms of sheer muscle mass over the steer that beats you. He's just not quite as far along in terms of body fat and condition. But certainly one that I like his shape when we get right behind him. I like his shape up high, one that gives a good look from the side, one that I think I'll give the benefit of the doubt to, and go ahead and bump you into the blue ribbon category. And so the top three steers will be blue steers. We'll bring the top two back for the champion intermediate deal. And then we'll move into the reds as we move into the bottom three. But a steer that I think I can comfortably put there. I think he's got enough on him, and that combined with the muscle and the look from the side, I think he's got enough quality to him. So congratulations to you there. The young man that brings the Hereford Mark steer here next. Here's one that, relative to the two steers below you, young man, this one's got a pretty exceptional muscle advantage as we study this guy, both in the muscle down his top and as he comes into his pin set there. But particularly when we get right behind him and just study the amount of muscle in his quarter and through his stifle, his base width at the ground, this one's quite a bit better than the other two that are the black steers are going to fall below you there. One that we just needed to feed on a little harder and get a little more body condition on him if we're going to move him up. But I certainly like the shape and expression of this particular red steer. The black steer that comes here in fifth. Here's one that just in terms of depth of body and getting the basics done, he does pretty good in that regard. One that's got enough muscle for his frame size, but he just needs to be further along. We've got to feed on him a little longer, get a little more body fat on this guy, and ideally give him a bit more muscle as we stand right behind him. He wants to narrow up at his base, indicating he just doesn't have enough muscle there in the rear third of his body. And if we change those things, then I think we can use some of those productive traits to move him up just a notch or two. The steer that rounds out the class, young man, you've done an exceptional job showing this one. It's obvious you've spent a lot of time with him. He's very gentle. He works very well for you out here. One that I like in terms of his length of body and length of hip. One that for me just isn't fat enough and he's not stout enough muscle to move him up in this particular class. But certainly a very good set of steers as we study these three, a great set of showmen. And again, commend all the showmen so far that have been in the ring. Let's put our hands together for them as we send them back.
We're going to bring back Cash Cash Wells, and Aiden Goodright to the champion show for intermediates. Last three of our intermediates, we're going to have Brooke Lockling, Saul Nunes, Grace Goodrow, sorry for butchering your names, and Isaiah Walker.
We're going to go ahead and stick all four of these steers in the blue ribbon category. I think all of these young people have done a nice job of feeding on them. The one on the end's right on the edge, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. So let's give them a round of applause for feeding four blue ribbon steers. Congratulations to you guys. With that said, I think the young man's black steer here is a pretty comfortable place to start. Again, I think I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record, but we're going to fall back on the one that's the most complete every single time, and I think that's the young man's black steer. I think just in terms of structure when he gets out here and travels, the way he's made up through his front end, that's combined with the fact that the young man does an exceptional job showing him. But the way he's made up through his front end, the way he ties into his top, back through his hip, and he combines that with a very comfortable and adequate amount of body condition and an adequate amount of muscle as we study on that guy. He's not the thickest one in here. He's not the stoutest one in here, but he's the combination steer of this particular group. So, young man, congratulations to you there. And as well, you will be the show or this particular class showmanship winner. So let's go ahead and give him another round of applause. The young lady's big red steer that comes here in second. Here's one that takes a little bit of studying to kind of figure out where to put him. One that I like just in terms of sheer muscle and expression and cutability in that guy. He's extra long bodied. He's a big frame steer. And when he first came in, my question was he was going to be fat enough. And he actually handles considerably better than he looks. Standing there, I certainly wouldn't think that he's got as much fat on him as he does. So I appreciate that, young lady. You've done a good job on him. One that if we're going to change him, we probably just need to give him an extra shot of depth when we look at him from the side, make him a little deeper bodied, kind of bring him down in frame size ever so slightly. But surely one that, again, just in terms of product and cutability and expression of muscularity, we need to like that guy. And I think he falls into second rather comfortably. Young lady steer that's going to be in third. Here's one that just gets the basics done very, very well. He's sound, he's long, he's deep, he's level. One for me just gets out powered just in terms of sheer muscle in the rear third of his body when we study that guy. Doesn't balance up quite as well because he's not as big and muscular and stout in the rear third of his body as he is up front. So if we change those things, then I think we probably edge him into second pretty easily. The steer that rounds out the class here again is one that's sound. He's deep. Fundamentally, he's made pretty good. This steer, like I said, he's right on the edge. I'm going to call him into the choice grade, but certainly one that maybe a few more days on feed wouldn't hurt this guy. But where we need to fix him is just in terms of the way he's built skeletally. He wants to be a little coarse in the way he's put together, and we combine that with a little more muscle, and then I think we move him up a spot or two. So let's go ahead and put our hands together for these four. An awfully good job. And again, they'll be all four blue ribbons. The young man up here in front, we'll go ahead and bring him back for the champion intermediate, and he'll be your champion or class winner in the showmanship division of this particular class. So let's give him another round of applause.
Weinbarger, Brody Adamson, and Kylie Hartzell.
Really nice class of mid to heavy 13 steers. Certainly, I think as we get into these heavier weights, we have some expectation that these steers should be done. They should be fed. They should be fat and ready to roll. And I think all three of these are. So congratulations to you. All three of you are going to be in the blue category. I think from there, if we kind of level the playing field relative to body condition and how these three steers handle, because I think they're pretty comparable. Then we look at all the other things that go along with it. And I think the steer that's the combination and puts the most muscle in this particular package and does that in a pretty attractive package from the side is the young lady's white steer. I think one that as soon as he hit the ring, I was crossing my fingers he was going to handle well enough. And he did. I think as we study this guy, particularly from the side, just the amount of muscle he has, the turn to his stifle, the length and shape across the plane of his stifle and quarter there. I think this guy's very, very good. If we're going to be critical of him, he might just need a little extra depth of body to make him balance perfect. When we get right behind him, he wants to actually close up just a little bit at the ground, more so than I would think, with as much muscle as he has from the side. But certainly one that just in terms of shape and expression and muscularity, I like that one quite a bit. The steer that comes in here in second, and this young man will be your showmanship class winner in the second hole. But young man, I think you've done an exceptional job with this particular steer. I think it's a little closer on the top than one might think. I think this guy has an advantage in depth of body. He has an advantage just in kind of mellowness, so how he looks and how he handles. He just gets out horsed in sheer muscle mass and power and expression relative to the steer that beats you. But one you've done a very, very good job with, and let's give him a round of applause for being your class winner in the showmanship division as well. The steer that rounds out the class, the young lady there in the red shirt, a steer for me. There's a couple other classes that where you probably would have been sitting first or second, but in this particular class, you get just out horsed in balance and skeletal correctness of this particular steer. He just gets a bit coarse in how we look at him and how he travels the ring, particularly when we get on him from the side. I think there's enough muscle there, there's enough body fat there. So fundamentally, you've done a very good, very, very good job with him. But he just doesn't have the balance and correctness of lines and look from the side that we need to get him up any higher in this particular class. But a nice set of steers for these heavies. Let's put our hands together for him one more time in the intermediate division. We'll bring the top two back in this particular class.
Class 5 intermediates. We're going to have Braden Griggs, Kaylee Joe Baker, and Aaron Decker.
Well, these are our heavyweights in final class on the intermediate side, and I think three steers that are awfully different in the way they're presented out here, the way they look out here, and the quality. But certainly, I think as we talk about them again, I'm just absolutely ecstatic at the amount of showmanship ability you guys have brought this year. It's a night and day difference from last year, and we've seen our seniors and intermediates today, and hopefully we hold over and the juniors continue to impress tomorrow. But really, really, I'm very very thankful that you guys have done such a good job on the showmanship side of things. With that said, I want to talk just a minute about that. Before we talk to steers, the young lady with the red steer, or with the red shirt with the black steer, excuse me, you're going to be the showmanship winner for this particular class. But I just want to make comment too. I know that this obviously is a non-traditional type of show, but young lady, you've done a very very good job of presenting this one. I know in times when the carrot at the end of the stick and the end of the string there isn't always what we want it to be. It's hard to get out there and rinse and comb and brush and put fans on and all the things that need to be done on these steers. And it's obvious that you've spent some time with this guy because his hair is exceptional. He's clipped, he's presented well, and he's obviously been spent some time with and on the stick and the halter because he shows very very well for you. So I just want you to know that from this side of the microphone, I appreciate that very very much and the hard work you put in. And so congratulations to her. She'll be your class winner on the showmanship side, and if you would give her a hand. As we talk the steers, I think it's pretty far and away different between that one and the other two, just relative to muscle, body fat, and quality. I think the steer that wins, we can put a lot of terms on this guy. Dense, bulky, stout, muscular, whatever you want to say about him, he is that. There's no question. This is the most muscular steer we've seen all day. He's the biggest topped. He's the biggest ended. He's the biggest through his stifle and quarter. He's the biggest legged. This dude is dense and bulky and stout. But that doesn't come without fault because we've got some issues with him that we need to recognize. Some are talking points and some we need to be critical of relative to how he may place later. But certainly a steer that we just need to clean up in his ability to move around the ring. He's wanting to open up at the point of his shoulder a bit and kind of get out there. His right front leg, he tends to want to hold up there a little bit, and he's starting to bow up on his knee. But certainly one that if we can loosen him up, lengthen him up front, just kind of loosen his whole skeleton up a bit, the amount of mass and body and stoutness and density that one has is pretty exceptional. So young lady did a very very good job with him. And I'm not trying to be ultra critical of him. I just think we need to recognize that steers like that are super cool to look at, and all the things are so neat on him. That if we can just loosen him up and put him in a little better structure package, certainly there's one that's awfully cool. So congratulations to you there. We're going to move, and that steer will come back, and that steer will be the blue ribbon steer in this particular class. We're going to move into two steers that are going to fall in the red category next. The young lady in the blue shirt with the baldy steer. Here's one that checks a lot of boxes in just making a basic kind of market steer. This guy's deep, he's long, he's sound, he's productive and functional. One that for me in this particular class, he's just not far enough along at this particular weight. He's up over 1,400 pounds, and he better, or close to it. He better be a significant amount. Have a significant amount more body condition to really be ideal, and he's not there yet. Sometimes on these steers, when we get real heavy like this, we've got to kind of cut our losses and be done with them. But at the same time, he's not done. So that's a steer that we need to moderate in terms of frame size and give him the ability to get fat and get done and reach his endpoint at a little lower weight and a few extra or fewer days, excuse me. But certainly one young lady, you've done a very very good job showing him. I like this productivity. I like his depth of body and length of body as well. The steer that rounds out the class here is one that follows suit. One that's again, he needs to be fatter. He's high 13s. He probably needs to be high 14s to really get where he needs to be. One that is just a little more moderate in his frame size, but he's a little further behind in body fat. One that needs to be more muscular if we're going to move him up. Young man, you've done a good job with him. You've spent some time with him. Obviously, he works very, very well for you, and you need to be commended on that. So let's put our hands together for the three in our heavy intermediate class. Again, we'll bring the class winner back, and we'll evaluate your champion intermediate here shortly.
Intermediate champion round. Kaylee Jo Baker, go ahead and stay in the ring. We're going to need Merritt O'Gorman, Cash Wells, Aiden Goodright, Saul Nunez, Callie Weinbarger, Brody Adamson can all come back into the ring.
All right, let's put our hands together for the intermediates. Good group out here, and took a couple extra minutes to try to figure out where where we want to land relative to the intermediate division and your champion and reserve intermediate market steers. And I think the reason I took an extra minute because I think it's challenging out here. I think there's some give and take in each of these steers, and I don't think there's one out here that really jumps out and says this is the one that needs to win. I think that every one of these steers has some really positive attributes, and every one of these steers has some things we need to fix if we're comparing them to ideals. So it becomes a little bit of personal preference, and I guess that's where it falls back on my opinion and kind of where we need to be on this deal. And like I said a couple times, we're going to try to resort back to finding the ones that are the most complete. They may not be the outliers or have those EST terms relative to the group, but I think if we always force ourselves or at least strive to go back to the ones that combine the most good things, not just those necessarily wow pieces, then I think we're gonna ultimately land on the best ones at the end of the day. So, with that said, I'll go congratulate your champion and reserve intermediates. Let's give them a hand one more time, and congratulate them.
And Callie Weinbarger is going to be your reserve champion intermediate today. Thank you. For one of our showmen to get ready to come back in the ring to do our breeding class. We'll go ahead and take 10 minutes and we'll see you back in the ring. Callie Weinbarger. breeding class, and it's going to be Callie Weinbarger.
Well, if you're standing ringside, let's go ahead and give the young lady a round of applause. Really, really a nice heifer she brings out, and I know this gets probably said too many times when they're single entries, but and in this particular case, I think it warrants saying. I wish there was more heifers out here that we could beat with this one, because I think she's awfully good. Just when we study her in terms of being very feminine and having a real female look up front. She's great in her depth of body at this stage of the game. She's a level design kind of heifer that's very attractive from the side. And then when we get behind her and kind of study those things that will reciprocate into making market animals down the road, she's got plenty of muscle for a female where she needs to. She's sound structured as she gets around the ring, and the young lady does an exceptional job showing her. So, with that said, the heifer will be your champion breeding female, and the young lady will be your class winner for the showmanship side of the breeding cattle division. And with that, give her a round of applause and thank her for bringing her out.
Champion Callie Weinbarger.